when I went up there, I told him, he said, "What you got?" I said, "Man, I believe God wants me to go into bars at 2 p.m. on Sunday and do a unchurchy church service." And he turns to me. Now, this is, you gotta understand this. He had been the president of of a chapter of the Bandidos for 9 years, and he turns to me and he says, "Man, I think that'd be a real success. I think that'd be great." And I said, "Okay, really?" Because you got to understand, I'm riding over there. I'm driving over there going, "God, why am I going to tell Bandito Nitro what I'm doing when I haven't even told my pastors or my brother or anyone, like my mom, no one, and my wife? I mean, and he says, "Yeah, I think it'd be a great success." He says, "But hey, if it only saves one person, that'd be a success, right?" And I said, things that I never expected to hear from Bandito Nitro.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. I'm Peter Demas. I'm excited to debate today to be with Randal Reeder. He has an incredible background. He has it seems like he's done everything, and as you can see from him, you can tell that he does not work in an accounting firm somewhere in New York City. He has been in Hollywood. He has been in Deadpool movies. I've seen him in the movie W. He has been in Sons of Thunder and just a lot of different things there. Had a very storied background. I met him at an event that we were both speaking at, and just really fascinated by his story, and just excited to have him on the show. So, Randal, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, it's an honor. Appreciate it. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it.
Good, good. I gotta ask. So you mainly go, like, one of the things that you do is part of Save Savage, and that is basically you hold church in bars, and we're not talking about, again, these yuppie bars where they do pretend like they go to church on Sunday, and then they are doing something else and drinking these fancy smoked beverages. You go to like these biker bars, these bars on beaches, etc. So tell me, like, uh, how did you end up kind of getting into this ministry?
And I'll tell you, it's an interesting story. I I was spending a lot of time in the Houston area, as a lot of my family lives there. I'm from there, from that area, and my aunt Sandy was taking care of my grandmother, who was 90, probably 93, 90 years old about at that time. And this is about 4 years ago. I'd finished up Sons of Thunder. We'd done Sons of Thunder, and it's a success on Pure Flix. And then, but we weren't doing. I wasn't doing another season with them. They were doing it different. They were doing a season without me. And in all this time, this is where about the time I met Ben Graham, who's our mutual friend. And I was working with this other platform that no longer exists, I believe, and a streaming platform, because that's to me, I'm just trying to fix the distribution problem myself, and I believe 50% from my experience, 50% of the producers in Hollywood are lean right. Let me put it that way. I'm not going to say they're full blown conservatives, but they're lean right. And but there's a distribution problem because we can't get we can make the best movie in the world, but if we can't get it distributed, it
Right.
doesn't matter. It's just a hobby. So anyway, in all of this, Ben Graham had been, it's like, "Hey man, if you build this Americanic thing, we'll come, and so will others." So my brother and I found a builder to build this streaming platform, kind of a Amazon Prime or a Netflix, but not satanic and pedophilic and all kinds of disgusting stuff like some of them are. So anyway, we just wanted to rewind Hollywood 40 years and just make good content that every Union Democrat to Trump conservative wants this. 80% of America just wants to sit down and drink a cold beer or an iced tea with their family and watch TV after work and not be offended as an American or a Christian. So anyway, we were going to build this Americanic, and we wired the money off. And myself and several others around me do. Let me see, I don't think I have to have those. So we do I do an app every morning. I guess you'd call it. It's Daily Audio Bible. It's actually up there. They hub out of Tennessee, but it's just really cool. And they go through the Bible, every year, so I do that every single morning, and so does my Aunt Sandy. And so 3 days before this day, we had wired off the money to get started on Americanic.com, and we finish up the word. My Aunt Sandy does that same Daily Audio Bible. A lot of my friends and cousins and people like that do. And so it's kind of cool. We're on the same page. So, when we're together, it's like a devotion, and we get up really early in the morning. And all of a sudden, we finish up the word, and I'm just staring at the floor. And she's like, "Hey, is everything okay? You all right?" And I said, "Yeah." And I just said, "What's going on?" And I heard myself say, I don't believe God's going to bless anything I touch until I put his ministry first in my life. And then I was just like, why would you say something like this? This is like, why would you say, you just cursed everything you did? I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't say it. I just heard myself say it. So, to me, God spoke to me through me that I had to do this thing. And so the natural question is, well, what's that ministry? And I'm like, well, that's the thing. You would think if he told me to do it, that he would, or he wouldn't bless me, he would tell me what it is. And I was really upset with God that morning. I don't know if you've had that experience before, but I was like, wow, this is not cool, Lord. You just cursed everything that I do if I don't do this thing that I don't know what it is. And I don't know, I was in the shower an hour or so later, and I'm, showering off, and I've got my Pandora music going on my phone on the lavatory of, like Zach Williams is my favorite Christian artist. So I'm listening to Zach Williams, Pandora. Probably it's We the Kingdom or Third Day or whatever it's playing. I don't know, because it just bounces around. And all of a sudden I'm showering, and I'm like, Lord, you cannot be telling me to go into bars at 2 p.m. every Sunday and do a unchurchy church service. This is crazy. I'm just making stuff up. I'm being transactional. You said you don't bless me till I do it. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I'm just throwing stuff at the wall. This is crazy. I knew I'd be a crazy person, homeless on Venice Boardwalk one day or whatever, but I just didn't expect it to happen now. And I mean, this is what's going on through my head. This is nuts. And about that time, Cody Jinks starts playing on my phone. Cody Jinks is a hell-raising, beer-drinking, outlaw country guy in Texas. And I was like, what is Cody Jinks doing on my Christian Pandora? So I open up the curtain, and I grab the phone to thumbs down it so that it doesn't mess up the algorithm.
Right.
That kind of music does not belong on this Pandora, on this station. And about that time, Cody Jinks, in his deep voice, says, I remember Matthew 5. I'm just thankful to be alive. And a lot of those people on the mountain are just like me. And I was like, oh, I set the phone down very quickly. I'm like, Lord, why is Cody Jinks talking about the Sermon on the Mount right now? This is crazy. And I just look up into through the ceiling into heaven and say, okay, God, I will go into church. I will go into the bars every Sunday and do church, unchurchy church service. Just please don't make me call it a church, and please never call me a pastor. And that was it. And and that song was give all you can, which is when you listen to the words, it's like, wow, it was speaking straight to my heart. And so 8 days later or so, we went to went to a bar. Of course, then I had to find a bar. I'm like, how do I find a bar? Okay, Lord, I'll do it, but how do I find a bar? I was like, wait, my buddy Clint, he's crazy. He owns a bar. So I called him and said, hey, bro, actually said, do you have an Apple device? He said, yeah. Because I've been trying to catch him at his bar. I dropped by a couple of times, couldn't catch him. And I said, hey, can I FaceTime you? And he says, yeah, weird, but sure. And the reason was because I'm about to ask this guy if I can do church at his bar. I wanted to have,
Right.
like I didn't on a text it would be like a joke. And so anyway, I FaceTime him. He goes, hey, what's up, bro? And I was like, hey man, can I borrow your bar at 2 p.m. this Sunday? And he's like, yeah. And then he says, what do you need it for? Which is funny. He said yes instantly. And I said, man, I want to do a church service, like an unchurchy church service. And he goes, so wait a minute, you want to do an unchurchy church service at Kima Shop Bar this Sunday at 2 p.m.? I said, yeah. He goes, that's awesome. I'll cook chicken and waffles. And I was like, wow, that is not the reception I was expecting. And it's kind of been that way the whole time. Like we've had nothing but, I mean, I don't think we've done a bar that didn't want us back. And we really never do the same bar 2 weeks in a row. So we kind of
Right.
alternate around, and it has been, the miracles I can tell you have been just, unbelievable. The things that I've seen in the last 4 years are absolutely astonishing. We go in every Sunday. We kind of we want the divey bars is what we
Right.
literally seek after. I mean, we do other stuff, but we really, that's the ones we're appealed, that appeal to us is we go in there, we're looking for that bar that's only got 3 to 10 people at a bar on a Sunday at 2 p.m., because that's who we're really wanting to be there to minister to. We don't try to go to bars that have 200 people on a Sunday, or a biker bar that had, like a
Right.
one that's on a riding route. People are like, they're always trying to say, oh, this bar has a bunch of people on Sunday. I'm like, yeah, that's not what we're after. We're after those people that are somewhere. Now, we'll to them occasionally, don't get me wrong. We don't discriminate, but we're really out there for those people that are at a bar on 2 p.m. on a Sunday because they have nowhere else to go, and we rolled in with our 20 to 50 people that kind of tour with us, the touring circus. And then these people are like, what's going on here? And we see them turn around from their stool from the bar with their beer in their hand or a drink in their hand, and we see hearts moved and changed often, and it's just incredible. It's just incredible. It's the most.
I was gonna say I have a friend of mine who rides a lot, and one of the things they do is they will host an event where they will bless the bikes,
Mm-hmm.
and he's told me where a lot of the even one percenters will come
Yep.
and just to get their bike blessed, and then they drive off. They don't
Yeah.
participate in anything else. They don't eat any of the food. They just like, hey, I just want my bike blessed, etc. So I gotta ask. I mean, you're dealing with somebody, and I'm sure that you've kind of reached people that aren't, maybe not one percenters, but or maybe they are, but or like kind of wannabes
Right.
of some level in these areas. Yet they recognize that there's something more to it, but not enough for them to change.
Right.
Why do you think that's the case?
Well, gosh, um, the thing that we're meeting them where they're at
Right?
possibly answers your question. The Safe Savage is full of, and I mean full of, like a lot. I kind of have it's sort of a joke, but it's pretty real. It's pretty true. That Safe Savage is full of a bunch of people who have broken most of the commandments, and a few of us have broken all of them. So, I mean, when it say savage, it sounds catchy and all that, but it's real. Like, I mean, there's like we really minister to to savages. Like a lot of us we've been savages. And spent much of our life that way. And
Have you ever been stranded with a flat tire in the middle of nowhere? My first semester home from college, I was driving back to college, and that's what happened. I was halfway between two places, a couple miles from the exits, and I had to walk miles in the cold to get to a phone. That's why I would have loved at that point in time to have Air Moto, and that's why I bought it for my wife and kids, especially when they're traveling to remote places. With Air Moto, they don't have to depend on anyone else for help. They don't have to depend on walking or waiting in their car, hoping that nobody comes along while they're waiting for their friends or family to pick them up. This compact, high-quality tool is always ready to go. You can put it right in the glove box, and it can actually inflate all four vehicle tires in a matter of minutes. It's powerful, it's reliable, and it gives my family peace of mind. Airmoto keeps us prepared for all the things that can happen to us with our tires while we're going. It's a great Christmas gift this year, and it'll just help you kind of just feel very comfortable for your wife and family as they travel. So highly encourage you to get it. You can go to airmoto.com, or you can check out the link below in there and click through the link in order to order yours today.
So that's a difference. That's possibly a difference that makes us, Safe Savage more effective, in that. I'll tell you from the beginning. So the interesting story. When I did Sons of Thunder, I'll talk about it now because it's going to come out in the book anyway. I'm writing a book, and so the last two episodes of Sons of Thunder was about my character, having a run in with a 1% club, and my old 1% club, my character's old 1% club, and it required a motorcycle shop. So friends of mine had asked, "Hey, do you need anything when you're filming here in Texas?" I said, "I'm looking for a motorcycle shop that I can film at." You know what? I got a buddy. Why don't you go talk to this guy? So I go by and talk to this guy named Nitro. And he was like, "Yeah, man, that'd be great. Film here, let me know if I need to shut down or anything." I'm like, "Well, man, I'll try to keep it where you don't shut down." And he goes, No, man, this will be awesome." And that guy, Nitro, was a president of a chapter of the Banditos, which is a 1% club worldwide. Right. And so he and I became, friends there, for those few weeks that we shot, 2 weeks that we shot there. But then we remained friends. When I'd come in, I would come see him, and and then now the time, a year and a half later, or however long it was, that God told me on a Friday morning to go into the bars at 2 p.m. Had the shower incident, and then Saturday morning I wake up, and I had not told my pastor, either one of them, because I have a California pastor and a Texas pastor. I hadn't told either one of them about this yet. And I hadn't even told my brother, who is pretty much partners on everything with me in life. And I just woke up and I'm drinking coffee, and I texted Nitro. I was like, "Hey, man, can I come talk to you?" And he says, "Yeah, come on by." I said, I'll try to get there before, the crowd gets big at your shop, on Saturday morning. And when I went up there, I told him. He said, "What you got?" I said, "Man, I believe God wants me to go into bars at 2 p.m. on Sunday and do a unchurchy church service." And he turns to me. Now, you understand this. He had been the president of a chapter of the Banditos for 9 years. And he turns to me and he says, "Man, I think that'd be a real success. I think that'd be great." And I said, "Okay, really?" Because you got to understand, I'm driving over there going, "God, why am I going to tell Bandito Nitro what I'm doing?" when I haven't even told my pastors or my brother or anyone, like my mom, no one, and my wife. I mean, and he says, "Yeah, I think it'd be a great success." He says, "But hey, if it only saves one person, that'd be a success, right?" And I said, things that I never expected to hear from Bandito Nitro, and so he was in from day one. Right now, he runs. I mean, he's been running our Bible study for a year at least. He around a year. He is a faithful member of what I my church in LaPorte, Texas, Life Community Church. But what he says that's not your church, it's my church, because he's been going there for 3 years. He joined the congregation. I mean, just doesn't miss unless he has to, and then he's upset about it. He's no longer a bandito. He got out of the club and spent a lot of time. He got out of the club and yeah, I mean it's incredible. So day one. I mean, we're talking about day one of the ministry, really. I mean, I said I would do it Friday and Saturday morning. I'm telling Nitro about it, and we baptized him. Awal and I baptized him in the Gulf of Mexico. Our first baptism 3 or 4 months in. So, yeah, it's one of those, like, Nitro alone is the one. Like, if there was only one, my whole life, every pain, every horrible thing I did, every that led me to doing Save Savage, every mistake, every, like I say, pain, struggle, anything was all worth it just for that one man, Nitro. But there's hundreds of those ones
Right.
in this last 4 years. It's incredible. I mean, it's the most unbelievably humbling thing that I've ever been a part of in my life.
So I'm curious, you were telling me, that most of the people that were there have broken most or not all the Ten Commandments. I would argue that most of the people that I see that are look more like me than like you have also done the same. Some of it is just more obvious than others,
Yeah.
based off of many different characteristics, especially when you're looking at subcultures such as motorcycle gangs, etc. But what I find interesting is that I'll tell you the first time I ever heard of the Banditos or ran into them, we were taking a family trip. We were going, we were west. We hit Amarillo. We're like, we're going to see Cadillac Ranch,
Mm-hmm.
and so we went there, and it was like I said, me and my whole family. My kids were upper teenagers, and as we were leaving, it was real windy that day, and there was a big group of motorcycle guys. You could just the way they were dressed, etc. And my wife went over and just said, "Hey, I want to know how you're riding in this weather." Well, when she did, like everyone just kind of froze. And we look like we're just like typical tourists, like we're on National Lampoon's Vacation type tourists, and and everyone kind of froze, and then one guy kind of stood up and started talking to her, and I started talking to him, and we were talking about riding and the weather and different things. And then he said, "Oh, we ride all the time." And the way he said it, I was like, "Oh, we're at a different level now. We aren't
Yeah.
talking about weekend warriors. We're talking about
Right.
something else." And so, as we got to the car, whatever, I just Googled the back of the back of the
Yeah.
jacket and saw it and started reading about it. My daughter, who is also very inquisitive like me, she did the same thing independently, and we talked about it the next day. And my wife was like, "Oh my goodness." I'm like, recognize we were probably the safest people there because we were kind.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
nice to them. They got to see
Yeah.
something, I mean, people that look like us don't talk to people that look like them or probably scared of them, etc. I
Right.
have to ask, you've had to experience that yourself, which is, where people come up. I mean, you're a big guy. I mean,
Right.
you're big, you're tatted up, you're all this other stuff. So people out there may look at you and be like, "Oh my goodness, this guy's going to murder me any second." And you're
Right.
obviously not that person, maybe, or not that person anymore.
Right.
How do you, when do you obviously you find that an advantage in the people that you go and talk to, but how do you handle that when you're talking with other people who aren't in that area like you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely have had that, a lot. I've had that experience a lot, both sides, and I've been in that community, a lot of times. So I've had that, I've had that experience where, years ago, my second wife and I were in a bar, or we walked in a bar, and I noticed the color schemes everywhere, and I said, "Hey, are we in this kind of bar?" And which actually was a Bandito bar. It was and then they said, "Yeah, yeah, it's a Bandito bar. They meet upstairs and all that." And and so then my wife is like, "Oh wow, should we leave?" I'm like, "Oh no, you can come here when I'm not here." And she's like, "What?" She's like, "This makes you feel safer." I'm like, "Yeah, 100%, because nothing's going to happen here." So I've seen that side of it, and I've also, I've not really been crossways, but close, because it's a different culture. So that's a different culture. And now, of course, with Save Savage, we currently, there's always talks about other stuff, but we have a little patch that says and shirts that say we are a bar ministry with a motorcycle habit. So though about 50% of us are bikers, and I mean real bikers that ride all the time. I think I put 8,000 miles in the last 3 months on a Road King. So, and that's a lot of miles on a bike, and in bad weather, and ride in the cold and in the rain and all that. So we're kind of like, a lot of us are like that, but a lot of us aren't. And you know, so a lot of that is diffused sometimes with me. God has literally, I was just thinking about this morning, how God has, you know, at least allowed my life to go in bad directions and all this kind of things to make it to where I could start Save Savage Ministries, and I could approach people who have a sense of smell or something, or like, something to where they go, okay, this guy's been there, done that. I can talk to him, so,
Right.
but at the same time, my wife is an angel, who no tattoos, no none of that, never will, and just my past, I submit to a pastor, and I work around Hollywood liberals. I'm pretty comfortable in any room. I mean, I could change and put a. Well, I mean, when you saw me, I had to, not, I was dressed nice and all that. Just this morning, I'm not, so um there's that. So some of the, and then Hollywood, it diffuses, like my resume kind of diffuses that sometimes, and will put me in a room where people go, oh wait, that's the guy from Sons of Thunder, thankfully, or hey, my kids want to take a picture with him because he's Buck from Deadpool or whatever. So I'm blessed. God has kind of created me and allowed the devil to even, I think, the enemy to scar me up, my heart, body, and soul, to in order to do what I believe he's called me to do. So there's that, and that's humbling. I mean, I don't say that with pride. I say that with all
Right.
humbleness. Like, I can't even. It baffles me, which really makes me think of probably the third sermon. I hate to call what I do sermons, but for lack of a better word, I was at a church, at a bar, and it was the third or fourth sermon I'd ever done at Save Savage, and I remember thinking, and God had. So I basically said that for the last 20 years or so, I have went to church, maybe more. I've got a 30-year stumble with God at this point. Not really, it's vaguely remembered. It resembled a walk, but I've had moments where I was walking, but mostly stumbling, it seemed like. And I remember being in church for all these years, and secretly inside, I'm sitting next to these good people at the pews next to me, and I'm saying, God, I'm so vile. Like, I'm like, why would you? It's like, I wished I could be like these people, and I kind of hated myself. And since Save Savage, it's really healed, or began to heal, my relationship with God, and allowed me to approach him, knowing that he sees me through Christ,
Right.
which I didn't. I mean, I had the like that was driven into my. I mean, I've read the Bible. I've sat in thousands of preachers. Had preachers just driving it in this grace, and I really couldn't understand it. But since Save Savage, I've really now. Here's what's interesting, and of course I need to be careful not to go too far the other way. But now when I sit there in church next to the good people next to me, I sometimes often find myself going, wow, I kind of feel sorry for them because some of them don't know, not all of them, but
Right.
some of them don't know how much they need Jesus. Earlier, you said, a lot of the people that you were around, surprising, I might be surprised or something like that, that a lot of the people around have broken those commandments. Actually, and I agree with you because actually we're all safe savages, no matter how tight
Right.
we think we are.
The Demas's family has been in the restaurant business for many generations. We have been serving people in the Middle Tennessee market for 34 years. Try our spaghetti kits, our pot roast, which we slow cook for 4 hours, or our world famous baked chicken and rice soup, which many locals have dubbed Greek penicillin for when you feel under the weather. We make our food fresh, and upon placing our order with us, we freeze the order and send it to your house. Demas's is more than a business. 5 generations of restaurant operators have taught us many things about food, but more importantly, we have recognized that we don't sell food. We sell the experience of bringing people and families together, which our country desperately needs. So go to demasfamilykitchen.com and share in this journey today. And for right now, use the code UNCOMMON to get 10% off of your order. That's demasfamilykitchen.com.
Because Jesus took it a whole new level. He said, the law said, I think it's a Sermon on the Mount, by the way. Anyway, but he said, the law says, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say, if you lusted over a woman, you've already committed adultery. The law says, thou shalt not commit murder. But I say, if you've hated your brother, you've already committed murder. So technically, all of us have broken the commandments. All of them. We are that. Because in our minds and in our hearts, we have done that. So sometimes I've actually now look around when I go to churches all over now, which has been awesome in itself that I fellowship with so many churches. I wonder, it's like, wow, who amongst these don't know how much they need Christ, and his forgiveness. So that's an interesting thing that has happened out of Safe Savage.
I experienced something similar to that. I was at an event that you had to, wear the tuxedo and, all that stuff. And there was a group of people just kind of standing around, a group of men standing around, and they're all having this conversation. And there wasn't anything inherently unholy about it. They weren't talking about anything that was completely bad. But as I was listening to them talk, that thought went through my head, which is, you don't know who you are, most of which I know goes to church, but I recognize too they don't recognize not only who they are, but also recognize who they serve.
Right.
And there was something about it that just really hit me hard. It doesn't really matter, and I think we look on the outside, which we know God doesn't,
Right.
but we're driven by the same thing, just different things. So I have to ask, so before you got saved, when you were,
Mhm.
when you were only a savage, when you were an unsaved savage,
Right.
um, what was driving you? Were you motivated by money? Were you motivated by
Money.
pleasure? Money?
Money. Yeah. Oddly enough, most of the savage stuff I did have done in my life were after ministry, like, in my 30s, really. I was kind of the good son. You know, I was, not really rebellious against my parents. I drank here and there, but I never was big into it because my parents didn't keep it from me. They were just like, hey, look, you don't go out there and get stupid and get arrested.
Right.
If you and your friends want to drink, go pitch a tent in the pasture and I'll buy you all a case of beer. My dad was like that, and and so it just, it wasn't taboo for me. So it just seemed, I had an interesting childhood. I was around a bunch of different people. My parents had racehorses, and then so I was around wealthy people. Then we had a plumbing company, or my family did, and so I was a plumber every summer. And I was just kind of motivated by money. And then I actually got led to the Lord I felt a nudge to walk forward at my wife's, the mother of my children, my first wife. I felt a nudge to walk forward at her church one Sunday, and that evening we were back down in Houston, and I said, I almost walked forward, but I didn't know if I'd be getting saved or joining the church, or. And she said, "Yeah, I don't really know. I guess kind of you would have joined the church. I don't know, but anyway, I can tell you how to. Yeah, I can tell you the sinner's prayer, and so laying in bed, that's how I got saved. Now, whether I had done that before at Sunday school or something, I didn't grow up in church, but I visited churches. But that was when I really know that that's where, the next morning I woke up and I said, I got to find a church. I mean, it was a real, salvation. And so I did, ended up finding a church, and we started going to church, and I started getting discipled by the Pastor David Cochran's my spiritual father still to this day. And he's not my pastor anymore, but
Right.
man, he was amazing. And I just overdid it really. I was that zealous guy, that's running everybody off probably, and about to destroy his marriage because I'm at church 5 days a week, and I'm taking the pastor here and going doing this, and just really overdoing it, probably, but I don't know. I mean, hindsight's 2020, and then but then when I went off to Hollywood, because I was in Texas, so I was an actor. I would do Walker Texas Rangers and little low budget films and stuff. But and finally in '04, I booked Sin City and Idiocracy back to back, and they were both going to come out in theaters and all that. And I'd had an opportunity to go do some King of the Hills, because Mike Judge did Idiocracy, and he said, "Man, you'd be really funny on King of the Hill." So I moved to Hollywood, and that's kind of where it's just kind of wild. Until then I was a Soldiers for Jesus MC member, like a motorcycle club, but it's a Christian motorcycle club. And I got out there and was bouncing at bars and driving for escort services and just all kinds of stuff, trying to make money to send back to my wife and kids in East Texas. And kind of sleeping in my car, or sleeping, borrowing, couch surfing, bought a boat for a while, things like that, just trying to live cheap, and ended up, getting tangled up into crazy stuff. It's like, oh, you can make a little more money going over and collecting this money from this guy for this guy. And it's like, oh, I don't know about that. Well, I do need the money. And, when I remember when I called my Pastor Alan Neal, which is Nitro's pastor, I should refer to as, by the way. But sorry, Nitro. When I called your pastor, but no, but when I called him, trying to get out, I was like, "Hey, I need your prayers, because I'm in a mess out here with some bad people. And I don't know if I can get out without somebody dying, and it's just nuts." And that, so poor pastor, my pastor, he should not have to deal with stuff that he's had to deal with me. But I was well into. I mean, you got to understand, I was doing all this stuff, and I was reading the Bible every morning, and going to church on Sunday, and then going to the bar and getting drunk, afterwards, because I felt so bad about everything. I mean, it was truly just a mess, man. And all the while doing King of the Hills, and
Right.
big commercials and movies, and it was until I finally, obviously, I stopped doing all that stuff because I didn't have to anymore. But yeah, it's a wild thing for me. And I've had struggles, because I would read the Bible every year, and somehow when I was reading and oh gosh, not Rome, oh man, where Hebrews chapter 6, where it was this altar moment, because I remember being out in Hollywood doing all this stuff, but I was reading the Bible, and Christ in Hebrews 6, Paul, to me, was, I took it as like, oh, you already know about the basics of Christ, your resurrection of the dead and healing of the sick and all that. You need to go deeper into the knowledge of Christ. I'm like, oh, praise God, I'll keep going. But somehow, for years, like a decade or so, it was blotted out. Like I would read the rest of the chapter, and all I could focus on was like, oh, this is the time God spoke to me right here, and like verse here or whatever. And somehow, until a couple years ago, I just missed the whole part of like, if you've tasted of the Holy Spirit and you've walked away, it's impossible to come back, you know. And I went through a crisis a couple years ago where I'm like, Lord, wait a minute. What do you mean I would be crucifying Christ again? This is, wait, am I going to hell? Like, I mean, I did that. I walked away like, wait, like, okay, wait, okay. You talk to me every day. I can't be going to hell. I have a ministry. I do your work. You can't be going to hell. It's like, wait a minute. Some people will get there that day and say, look at all the churches I built and all this. And you'll say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. I never knew you. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to hell? Like, how, this is crazy. And of course I researched it, who that, oh, that was the Hebrews that actually had to, all this stuff. And eventually, days later, I just came to the conclusion. I just was praying, Lord, where are we at on this? And and He wasn't answering. And I just said, well, Lord, if I'm going to hell, you're more righteous than I could ever be, and I'm going to still serve you until the day I die, no matter what, even if I'm going to hell. And He was just like, okay. I mean, yeah, it makes me emotional thinking about it. But He says, good, that's what I need to know. And then I was like, I'm good. Okay, so I'm good. Like, and I mean, because I was, the stuff that I did, was bad. I had already been a youth pastor. I'd already been a youth minister. Or children's minister. I had already been to Brazil. I'd been a missionary to the outlaw community, in the biker community, and then I'm out there doing this crazy stuff. So it's really interesting. It's an interesting testimony that not a lot of people have. Mostly everybody does bad, and then they find Christ and they do good.
Right.
Like mine was this weird walk of now of a real slow. I kept going, but I fell so many times, and I don't really understand it. I can't wait when I'm in heaven to say, why did this? Where did I get? Did I get it wrong? Did this have to happen? I'm just not sure. So, but it's interesting.
So do you think in a lot of those situations, similar with you, where you compartmentalize it in such a way that you're like, okay, I have to do this to provide for my family. So you weren't doing it in order to try to get rich and get richer and get richer. It sounds like the money motivation for you was just survival of the money, and then maybe
Right.
get a little extra here or get an extra here. But do you think it's because you compartmentalize it? So I can read my Bible, I can go
Yeah.
and do something absolutely terrible within hours, and then the
Yeah.
next day read my Bible again, and
Yeah.
not connect it. Is that, do you think, what happened? And do you think that's what's happening to a lot of these people that are
Yeah.
going around doing a lot of these same things, but feel like they're okay?
I yes. I mean, for one, I mean, my motivation was to take care of my family, but I could have done that as a plumber.
Right, right, right.
I couldn't have worked as a plumber. I'm a third generation plumber. I could have made, you know, way more money out there in Hollywood as a plumber, but I couldn't be there. I wouldn't be available for auditions and to do movies and things like that. So basically, I blurred the lines so that I could get what I wanted, not
Right.
what God wanted. Okay, so um, I will say, so I can't defend it. I can't sit here and say that. And now, what I can tell you is that, now when I go to prisons with Safe Savage a lot. We've started doing that. We've really gone into prison ministry, and I will say that I'm certainly more prepared to speak to someone or even just to hug them and love on them, knowing that, you know, I know, unlike a lot of people, that, that some of those people just did what they did to get by or provide for their families. Or I've said this several times, or many times in prison, that when I'm telling my testimony, and I'll say, it's horrifying to know what a man will do in order to take care of his family,
Right.
and it really is terrifying because I know, the things that I've done, some of the evil that men do to take care of their family. Now, of course, is there a better way? Sure, God could have, if we'd have, if we'd have listened, heard correctly, we probably wouldn't have to do that. There would be a better way. But when we start blurring, we start trying to do what we're supposed to do, but in our flesh, that's where we get wrong, and that's just where there's no way to do it right. It's gonna go wrong, and that's kind of what happened with me.
In Acts 5, we see that when Peter and the other disciples were ordered to stop talking about Jesus, they responded, "We obey God and not man." In 2020, we saw something we never thought we could see in this country. They shut down our churches. After decades of removing God from schools and public institutions, they went straight at our community. Unfortunately, we as Christians did not know what to do. And even worse, we chose to listen to false prophets masquerading as Christians on how to respond. I recognize this is the only beginning, and we need to know how to respond. We have a duty to say no to unjust laws, but as Christians, we have a greater duty to God. In my book, On the Duty of Christian Civil Disobedience, I use biblical teachings to help believers know when and how to stand up to those in charge when they ask us to commit evil. You can go to peterdemas.org to find out about our duty to say no. And when you type in the code UNCOMMON, you can get 10% off your order. That's uncommon at peterdemas.org. Remember, we are to obey God and not man.
On the other hand, like I say, so it disgusts me, but at the same time, I am more prepared to, God prepared me or allowed me to get prepared. I'm not sure, the whole,
Right.
the devil made me do it, but the devil kind of works for God. And if that's not the case, then explain Job,
Right.
It's kind of it's a weird thing. Because we are tested, we're not tested by God, we're tested by the enemy. These tests, but God doesn't do it; He allows it to happen. So, I don't know. Either God is currently in my life. I'm in the permissible will of like, well, since you did all that stupid stuff, now you can do this ministry for me, or God planned it, originally. That's a tough one for me because when I was 17 years old, we didn't go to church. Like we would visit, but my family, my parents, we didn't go to church. My grandparents, but we went to my Uncle Gary's church. My mom and I, when I was 17, like right over I'm in Carthage today, at our place here, and we went to Tatum, Texas, just 20 miles from here, or maybe less, 15, and it's 30 something years ago. And there was this prophet in town, and I'd never heard of a prophet. I was like, oh, that prophet, is that like a soothsayer? That sounds cool, because I was pretty ignorant. And anyway, this guy prophesied over me that night that I would minister to gangs and rough groups of people that my pastor could never reach. That's like word for word. And that prophecy over the years has probably 10 different people have said almost word for word the same thing. Now, the interesting thing is when I was a kid, when I was that age, I was 17 years old, I didn't look like me at all. I'm talking about a shaggy, ginger, freckle-faced, doughboy, 6'8", 300-pound, soft, almost, I definitely wasn't what I am now.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to me. And kind of when I'm writing this book, I'm like, wow. I'm posed with that question, like, God, did you just let all this stuff happen so that in the end I could accomplish what you told me? Because it changed me. I was not that guy. Back then I was hauling racehorses for a living. Like I was just hanging out at the racetrack, and when the tracks would close, I would haul those horses to the next place, and that was my career. I was going to go make $250,000 a year just seeing the United States through the windshield. And now but then I went into pro wrestling, and then I went into acting, and then I went into doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and in order to keep that career afloat. And then now I'm a Save Savage, the founder of Save Savage, and going into these bars, these rougher bars that some people can't even go in. So I don't know. I don't
So,
know.
so when you look back at that, and I know, you know, I think, and I see this a lot in prison ministries. I see this a lot in a lot of different places. It sounds to me that fear was that you were being led by a spirit of fear, that you were being led, whether the fear you weren't going to be able to provide for your family that week, or the fear that you didn't know where you were going to stay, or and so you make decisions rooted in fear versus
Absolutely.
rooted in trust. It can.
Absolutely.
So when you see that now, so when you're talking to a lot of these people that are at these bars at 2 o'clock, and they're sitting there, and they're not expecting you to come in, and then they start turning and they're paying attention. Do you see the same thing in them? Do you see a fear base in them as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's, when, and particularly on a Sunday at 2 p.m., if you, there's, I'm sure there's many types, but the two types of bars I really see are the bars that are packed with 100 people because all the bikers are stopping there on their route, or there's the dive bar that, again, there's only a few people sitting at the bar. And to me, they're really looking for something, and yeah, I mean, it's, I'll tell you, yes, fear, because, I'll tell you fear and shame, because I'll tell you what's been interesting is, when God told me to do this, I was just like, yes, sir, I'll do it. I mean, the music played, and sign and after sign after sign all
Right.
throughout the next week. I mean, there were 6 or 10 confirmations, and that I'm supposed to do this. And I was like, okay, God, I'll go lead some drunks to the Lord. I mean, I can't believe I even say that, but I did say that,
Right.
I'm honest. And I was just like, that is the most dismissive, disrespectful thing, but that's what I thought in my mind. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll go lead some drunks to the Lord. Man, I'm in freaking Texas. Like, everybody knows Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he may not, they may not have that relationship with the Father through him and all that,
Right.
but everybody knows about Jesus. We're not in Russia, or something, or wherever. And I had no idea what I did. I would completely was clueless that that Safe Savage ministry would really be largely, and I'd say 80% of everyone that we deal with, or that we bring into Safe Savage, or that joins Safe Savage, or that just starts following with us or whatever, are church hurt. 80%. Every bit of 80%, maybe more.
I was.
Wow. Yeah, to the point that, I had a guy walk up to me a few months ago and say, at a big bar that we do, and out in the middle of nowhere, and he walks up and he says, man, thank you for what you're doing. I said, oh man, of course, brother, we love this. And he says, yeah, but coming from a man who will not step foot in a church until his funeral, thank you for what you're doing. And I was like, whoa, wow, that's heavy. Yes, you're welcome, and very welcome. It's an honor. And rewind a minute. Like, why will you not step into a church until your funeral? Again, he said, again. And I said, and I said, why is that? And he said, man, when I met my wife, I was an associate pastor. I was like, okay, dude, keep going.
Yeah.
And he said, stuff I saw in there, I'll never go back. And I'm like, good Lord Almighty, have we done that bad of a job as Christians in the church? I mean, of course, we are the church. So,
Right. Right. Right.
brick and mortar is not the church. We are. But wow, have we done that bad? and yeah, we have, now I also at the same time I tell occasionally when I can be this straightforward. Sometimes I can't. I have to be gentle, but sometimes I'm like, well, hey man, okay, so you got hurt in church. Yeah, man, I got hurt in church. I'm like, okay, cool. You're in the oil field, right? Yeah, yeah, I'm in the oil field. It's like, have you got done wrong at an oil field
Right.
company? Of course, man. They all suck. They're horrible. Like, yeah, yeah. So did you leave the oil field? Well, no, I went to the next job. I'm like, yeah, exactly. You went to the next company. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, you get hurt at a church. Oh, don't leave the church. I mean, go find another church, pray and God will place you somewhere. Or by the way, there people say, oh, their church is all full of hypocrites. I'm like, yeah, I know it sucks. And they're like, yeah, that's why I'm not going to go. I'm like, well, but if you don't go, if you're not a hypocrite and you don't go to church, then you're kind of messing up the ratio. You're leaving all the hypocrites in church. Like, go be not a hypocrite in church. And so I defend the church, not, I mean, like I
Yeah,
say,
right.
when it's appropriate. I mean, I'm dealing with people that, often are church hurt and they're just like, I'll never go to church, but I'll come here. I'm like, okay, well then come here. But really, this isn't a church. This is an outreach. We're evangelizing. And I really would rather help find you a church. And a lot of times they do, we've had, well, I mean, starting with Nitro, but we have several. I mean, we've had just tons of people who now go to church, who found a church, and the what really blesses my heart is like this. I remember this woman. She came up to me and she says, you know, I never. She said I just never would have went to church again. She said, but after coming here, one Sunday I couldn't make it here, and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to run down to this little church in my neighborhood and see what. And she said, now I go to that church faithfully, and she hardly ever. I don't see her often.
Right.
We don't see her because she goes to church. And it's a good church. It's a really active church. And that is that we have a banner that we have made that in our booth or tents, when we're at events, and it has a church, a bar, and a church, and a bridge being suspended from our Save Savage cross, because that's kind of
Right.
what we really consider it, and that's what it became. Again, and when we started, I had no idea. I had no idea that's what it was going to be, but it feels like we're more sheep dogs, like, or we're leaving the herd to run over for that one. We're leaving the 99 to go over and grab that one. So, but that, we just kind of herd the sheep back into the fold, is kind of how we feel, and it's been incredible. There's been other ministries spawn off of it. There's, church, organizations always have kind of splits, so
Right.
to
Right.
speak. I don't see it that way. I end up, I just too quickly I saw that split wasn't a split. That was a division. That wasn't a division. That was multiplication. So I'm pretty excited about it. We've had, like, we've now we go out and visit churches that are in bars. I hopefully God will never call me to do a church in a bar every week, like, Broken Clay Fellowship. They do a church in a bar, and I love it and support it. Uh, we had some Safe Savages break off and do Pirate Church, Saltwater Revival Pirate Church, and I just never, like, I don't know that we'll ever do that, and I hopefully not, because I don't want that time slot. I don't
Right.
want to compete with that time slot that,
Right.
after like 2 p.m. is when God has told me to do it. And I look back and we've had, multiple times people have said, hey, could you change the time to this? I'm like, no, I can't, because like he told me that time very
Right.
specific. And they're like, well, that's kind of being ridiculous. I'm like, I know, because I'm really not very faithful about anything, but that, I'm really not, but like a letter of the law, I mean, I'm kind of, but that time, man, that's what God spoke to me. And I look back and I go, I think that's because for one, a lot of us, most, really all the leaders go to church
Right.
somewhere, different churches. We all have different churches, but we go to church and then we leave, and that 2 o'clock gives us enough time to get to the bar. And so we go get fed before we go feed. And I think it would burn us out otherwise.
Of course.
Because I'll tell you what, brother, we go into some dark, like, whoo, like I had no idea. I was clueless. Like I was clueless about the spiritual warfare and the attacks that we would, man. But when you start moving some folks from that to that over to here, back into the church, like you were on the devil's radar, like for real. Yes,
Well,
sir.
I appreciate you taking your time to tell us about this. How do people find out about it, and how do they find out where you're going to be? So for those of you who might
Right,
be in your area, how do they find out to support the ministry, and then how do they find out if they want to
right.
actually visit the ministry?
Yeah, SaveSavageMinistries.com. Um, they can look up SaveSavageMinistries.com, just one word. And that tells anybody where we're at, kind of tells where we're at, has a donate page, links and things like that. Um, so that would be great because as you can imagine, the bar ministry doesn't pay well. So there's no one's in it doing the money. I mean, we're blessed if it helps us get the gas to the next place. I
Right.
mean, the offerings we're not big on, we'll take up offerings, but we're not really big. We usually set it there, and we sell some shirts and things like that. So that's great, and you can buy those on the website. Facebook, unfortunately, it's that has kind of become the place where, where everyone goes to look for stuff. So anything Save Savage, pretty much most anything on there that is currently Save Savage is us. So from Save Savage, which kind of tells about us too. But Save Savage Sunday Service, Save Savage Ministries on Facebook,
Okay.
Save Savage. Each tribe has their own. So there'll be Save Savage Bay Area or Save Savage Piney Woods or whatever. So, but they type in Save Savage, and Save Savage Ministries for sure. We'll take them there, and then that'll kind of link. They scroll down, they'll see the different tribes and all that stuff. They're usually linked together, but that would be about that. That's pretty much the website or Facebook. I mean, we
Okay.
might be on Instagram and some of the others. We're on YouTube, but we don't work it a lot. We stay busy, and I get tired. I get tired. You can hear it in my voice. I'm tired.
Well,
So,
I do appreciate it, and I appreciate all you're doing, and I just encourage you to keep doing it, and I hope that this message gets out to others to recognize and see that there's a lot more out there than that's in their own little bubble. And so again, I do appreciate all you're doing,
amen.
and let
Amen.
us
Thank you.
know, and let me know how else I can also help in your ministries going forward.
Absolutely. And man, thank you for what you're doing too. It's tell you what, these times are crazy.
They are.
This is a exciting and terrifying time to be alive.
Well, God put us here for a reason, so we just got to figure it out. So he didn't put it.
Amen.
I kind of wish he put me back 40 years ago, but he didn't. He chose this
Yeah,
time. So,
that's right. That's right.
well, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. God bless you, and we'll talk to you later.
Bless you. Bye bye.